Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing one of my favorite kinds of videos to do, and that is a seasonal TBR. Obviously spring started very recently, just a couple of days ago, so I would like to sit down today and talk about 10 books that I would really like to read in the season of spring. I feel like I have some very distinct vibes going on for the spring TBR. On one hand, I have like very classic spring feeling reads, and then I have epic high fantasy, but I do have a couple of new releases that are coming out in April, or actually one of them might have already come out. But I feel like they kind of bridge that gap a little bit, so I think we're gonna start with the more spring feeling reads, and then we will progressively move towards the like epic high fantasy reads that I would like to try to read within the next 3 months as well. So let's just get into it. Without further ado, I really hope you guys enjoy hearing about my list of books I want to read. So first, let me start out with a book by an author that I think is just a quintessential spring author. I feel like there's no better time to read Jane Austen than in the spring. So obviously this spring I would really like to read Mansfield Park. This is the last full-length Jane Austen novel that I have yet to read. I am a little bit nervous going into this one. I just don't really know how I'm gonna feel about it, but I'm still excited nonetheless to get into this one and just see what it's about. I know we are following our main character, whose name is Fanny Price. What she's doing? I don't know. Let's read the back and find out. Apparently we're following Fanny, who is being brought up by some rich relatives that she has, and then one day this very glamorous couple comes to Mansfield Park, which is where she lives obviously, and their charisma and reckless taste to flirtation dazzle everybody except Fanny, putting her strength of character to its greatest test. So I cannot wait to just jump into this one and see if I like it or not. I've liked just about every other Jane Austen novel that I've read, aside from Emma. I'm sorry, I'm not an Emma fan, and that is my hot take for the day. But I'm intrigued to get into this one and see where it kind of slots in with my Jane Austen ranking. We'll see. I don't know, but I'm excited to check it out. Next up, I have a book that I think is gonna be the perfect like late spring, early summer kind of read. Like late May is kind of when I'm feeling like this would be a good time to read this book. And that is A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. I've been wanting to read some E.M. Forster, and I felt like this would be the best place to start, but I would also really like to read Howard's End soon as well if I like this, of course, or probably even if I don't like this, honestly. But this takes place around the turn of the century, and we are following our main character, Lucy, as she ends up going to stay with her cousin Charlotte in Florence for the summer. It says she finds herself torn between the intensity of life in Italy and the repressed morals of Edwardian England, personified in her terminally dull fiancé, Cecil Vyse. Will she ever learn to follow her own heart? I don't know, but I'm intrigued. I've heard really good things about this book. I know there's also a really great movie adaptation that some people like as well, so maybe I will read this and watch the movie. I don't know, but I'm excited to jump into this one nonetheless, and it just feels like a quintessential spring read to me, so we'll be reading this. The next up, I do have a children's classic, which I think I tried to read at one point, and I never continued on with it, but I decided it's time to try again. I am going to be reading The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. This seems like the quintessential, of the quintessential spring children's classic read. In this one, we are following our main character, Mary, who's, I think her parents die from like cholera, and she ends up going to stay with somebody in this gloomy house in Yorkshire, and it turns out there's this very neglected garden behind the house, and she ends up, I don't know, maybe like through the power of friendship with like some other people that either live there or live nearby or whatever, kind of, you know, I don't know if they're restoring the garden. They're doing something with the garden, and it's a secret garden. Okay, like that's all I got. So I'm just really interested to see if I like this one. I think this is a little bit more of like a hit or miss book for some people. I know Mary can be kind of awful. So I'm just curious to see how I feel about this book overall, but I want to give it a try, and I also really like the edition that I have of this book. I love the art style on it. Then I also would like to continue a series that I currently am reading, currently am loving. You guys probably already know what it is, but I would very much like to continue the Anne of Green Gables series by reading Anne of Ingleside. This is the 6th book in the Anne of Green Gables series. I just recently finished Anne's House of Dreams, which is the 5th one, and it was so good. It was my first 5-star of the year. Stunning. Loved everything about that book. It was so good. So I'm very excited to jump into the 6th book and kind of, you know, see what's going on in this one. Obviously, as you can tell by some, you know, some people, little people, on the cover of this book, what I'm thinking this is going to be, you know, a little bit more focused on. Oh my god. Sorry. The first sentence of this, it says, Anne, now a mother of 5? Literally, when did she have 5 kids? Oh my god, has it been 50? It's been 15 years. It's been a 15-year time jump since Anne's House of Dreams. She's growing up before my eyes. That's crazy. Really interested to see what Anne is like at 40? Because the last time I saw her, she was 25. What happened? Anyway, we'll be reading Anne of Engleside. All that to say. Then more of a modern classic that I'm very excited to finally jump into. I have put on a TBR in the past, and I tried it. I promise I did. We'll talk about it in a second, but I would really, really like to still read Blood in the Mist by Hope Mirrlees. I put this on my February TBR, I think, and I did read the first like 20 or so pages of this book, and I was just like, I was not vibing with it at that point in time. But I would really, really like to give it another try. I don't want to give up on it just yet. I mean, I only made it 20 pages in. I don't feel like I gave it a fair enough shot. So I want to like try it again at a different point in time, and maybe I'll like it more and like be more into it. But this was written, I believe, in the 1920s, but it is about this town that is being like terrorized by fairies, or like it's on the border of fairyland and like it ends up being terrorized by fairies or like something along those lines. The first 20 pages honestly just like kind of confused me. So I'm hoping trying it again, I'll get it a little bit more. But I'm excited to try. I just feel like a fairy story from the 1920s, that alone intrigues me. So I'm gonna try it again. I will not give up. What I will do though is adjust my curtains so I can stop being blinded. Did I make it worse? I think I made it worse. And then the last like more classic spring feeling read that I would really like to read is Spring Story by Jill Bartlett. I don't currently have a copy of this. I really would have liked to read this on the first day of spring. However, I did not even realize that Friday was the first day of spring. I feel like I dropped the ball a little bit and I did not get my hold in at the library soon enough, but I put a hold on it now. So hopefully I will be able to read it at some point in time during spring. But this is the Spring Brambley Hedge story. I just love reading the seasonal Brambley Hedge books. I just think they're so fun. Obviously they are meant for like small children, so they are a very quick read, might I say. And I just feel like this one's gonna be really cute. I don't know what the little wood mice are getting up to in this one. I feel like they're always having like some sort of event, like a ball or a wedding or like a dance or like whatever. So I'm sure they're getting up to something fun and whimsical. Whatever it is, I'm ready for it. I have, you know, I feel like read most of Spring Story because I've said this so many times, but I have all of the seasonal Brambley Hedge puzzles and I've done them all, and like all of the puzzles basically have all of the text from the book just on the puzzle. So I feel like I've read most of it, but like I feel like it'll be more fun to like, you know, read a cohesive story instead of like while I'm doing a puzzle, you know what I mean? So hopefully gonna be reading Spring Story, Brambley Hedge, super excited about it. It's gonna be so cute, so whimsical. Obviously I'm ready for it. What I really need to do at some point is I need to get like my own physical copies of the Brambley Hedge seasonal stories, but I now have a specific style that I want to collect them in, and I think they might be a little bit harder to come across. So wish me luck in my journey for that, but for now I'm just gonna borrow them from the library, so hopefully they'll come in soon. We will see. So that is the end of like my, you know, actual, you know, perfect spring read, like ideal spring reads list. Now we can talk about a couple of fantasy books that I also think would be really good spring reads, but it's like bridging the gap between this and the stuff that I want to talk about later. So first of all, I have How to Lose a Goblin in 10 Days by Jessie Silva. I believe this came out in January, either January or February. I'm gonna be hopefully checking this out from the library. I have a hold on it and hopefully that will also come in soon. But this one just sounds really fun and I'm interested to see if I like it because it is a like cozy fantasy rom-com kind of situation. And while cozy fantasy is typically very hit or miss for me, the fact that it's also rom-com intrigues me. So I'm just gonna give it a try and see if I like it. But this one is about, I think, like a halfling and a goblin. And I think they both like are laying claim to this house or this cottage that they think they should be owning, and they're like fighting over it or whatever. But I think it sounds very cute. It is apparently very like Lord of the Rings inspired. It says it's kind of like if The Hobbit met How to Lose a Guy in 10 days. 10 days? Yeah, 10 days. So I'm just intrigued by this one. I want to give it a try. I think it sounds really fun. And then the other one, I believe, is a new release. I don't think it's out just yet. I think it's coming out at some point in time during April. And that is Thistle Marsh by Moria Corrigan. This is another like fantasy romance kind of story, but it also involves fae and like a dilapidated mansion, so like obviously I'm a little bit intrigued by it. But it's set during World War I, and I believe we're following this nurse who ends up inheriting this like dilapidated house, and she ends up having to renovate it within like this certain amount of time, or like she doesn't get to keep it or something. So I think she ends up making a deal with like this mysterious, handsome like fairy or whatever, and I would assume romance ensues after that. I mean, it's fantasy romance, so like what else could you expect? It says it's a magical adventure filled with love, revenge, and dark fae bargains, blending historical fiction with Celtic folklore. So again, like I'm just a little bit intrigued by this one. I feel like it sounds like it could be a fun time. Maybe like another hit or miss kind of title, but I still want to give it a try. Those are like, you know, the two still maybe kind of spring reads. And then the last two books that I want to talk about are just like not at all, but I'm still planning to read these very soon, so I wanted to talk about them. The first one is a continuation of a series that I finally started this year, and that is The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. This is the second book in the Wheel of Time. I enjoyed the first book. I thought it was just a fun, very adventurous, classic fantasy feeling story. And I'm just excited to see what the gang's getting up to in this one. So hopefully I can make time to read this chunky fantasy book. Although this might be a little bit shorter than the first one. It's about 570 or so pages. I feel like the first one was at least 600, so not quite as chunky, but like still a little bit chunky. But I will be picking up the audiobook for this one as well. The audiobooks are narrated by Michael Kramer and Kate Reading. God tier audiobook narrators. I would trust them with any audiobook. It doesn't matter what it is, I would listen to it. So I just feel like that's gonna be a great time for when I want to escape a little bit and jump into this very, very epic feeling fantasy world. So hopefully we'll be reading this. And then the last book that I have on my spring TBR is actually a reread for me, which I am so excited about. I read this book for the first time around this time of year in 2021, so it has been 5 years since I last read this book. It feels like it was an eternity ago. But I've mentioned this a couple of times, for my Patreon, I'm starting a big book club. It is called Voluminous Volumes because all of the volumes that we are reading are very voluminous. And for our first big book, we are reading this from April to June. Yeah, that's how it works. We are going to be reading The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I am so excited to reread this. I obviously, you know, like remember some stuff about it from the first time that I read it, but 5 years is a long time, and I am just one woman, so my memory does fail me in some aspects when it comes to this book. So I'm excited to reread this one, get reacquainted with these characters. I liked Wind and Truth, but I didn't love Wind and Truth. So I'm hoping that going back to the first book in the series kind of renews my faith in Stormlight a little bit. Because I know, especially like this one and Words of Radiance are god tier. So like, obviously I'm gonna read this one. Have to read this one. But like, maybe I'll even give Words of Radiance a little reread. I don't think I'd want to reread Oathbringer or Rhythm of War. Obviously not Wind and Truth, but like the first two, kind of like god tier books for me. So this is so freaking shiny. I cannot wait to jump into this one, reread it, start from the beginning. It's gonna be a bit harrowing in the beginning, but I feel prepared for it. So this is the last book that's on my spring TBR. Again, like not a very good spring read, but I did read this book for the first time in spring, so like I do kind of associate this one with spring, just like for me personally. Those are the 10 books that I would really like to read over the next 3 months. Obviously I will be reading many other books within that time, but those are the 10 books that I would like to, like, for sure, please Katie, do not fail me, read these in spring. So obviously this video begs the question, what are some books that are on your spring TBR? Do any of these happen to also be on your spring TBR? I would love to know if we happen to share any, but I would just love to know anything that you guys are hoping to read within the new season. Before we go, I would like to thank everybody over on my Patreon. If you are ever looking for more content from me, that is always linked down below. As I said, we are starting a big book club this year, which is super fun. This is just the first one out of 3 that we're gonna be reading, but we also have monthly buddy reads. I do extra videos, reading sprints, all the fun stuff if you want to come check that out. But with that, I'm gonna let you guys go. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next video, where hopefully I might be reading some of these. We can only hope so. So yeah, bye!